So good morning, Congressman. And I'm John Samuelsen, International President of the Transport Workers Union, representing over 150,000 members across all transportation sectors. We're an industrially focused union rather than a craft focused union. We make every effort to organize all work groups at every employer, believing that worker power is derived from all workers, regardless of class or craft, standing together rather than craft workers. And organized into individual crafts like electrician, carpenter, that type of thing. So anyway, we've been organizing very heavily. We're growing, and I think that the trade union movement and workers in general are in the best possible place they could be when we work hand in hand with the Democratic Party to advance their livelihoods and protect their families. And that's exactly what's happened with this infrastructure bill. It's the greatest single investment across many of our transport modes, biggest single investment ever in the history of Amtrak. Same with public transit, just an enormous benefit for working people. Estimates that it's going to create somewhere in the neighborhood, or create or sustain, protect 750,000 jobs. And we just appreciate your leadership on this. And it's really been significant and historical. And I think in 15 or 20 years, when we look back, the full gravity of what was accomplished will be recognized. So thank you, and glad to be with you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and it's great to be with you. And I look forward to the conversation, and look forward to working with you in the future as well to further strengthen the labor movement.
Right. So we've seen on the news lately, and unfortunately, this insane rash of assaults against flight attendants. Full moon atmosphere on the planes. Just COVID has really turned the world upside down in terms of the danger that frontline transport workers are in. But I think what's gone a bit unnoticed, except you noticed it actually, and other Democrats as well, is that what's going on with the flight attendants right now has been going on in public transit for quite some time. And we've put really double down on our efforts through locally, through state legislatures and through our contract bargaining to protect against these assaults. But right now, for instance, in New York City alone, between the TWU and the ATU, there's 5 assaults on public transit workers a week. Imagine that, 5 assaults a week. It's unheard of. If 5 politicians were getting assaulted a week, they'd bring out the National Guard. If 5 teachers a week were getting assaulted, they'd bring out the National Guard. But this has gone largely unnoticed, and now there are efforts to address it in this bill. And to give the trade union movement the tools to begin to reverse this disgusting, appalling trend of assaulting transit workers because you're frustrated or whatever, has been really like a significant element of this infrastructure bill. And again, I think it's gone largely unnoticed. And I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that going forward, but we really need to work hand in hand to sort of reverse this lunacy that's going on.
Yeah, the safety of the traveling public is my top priority, and people need to feel safe when they travel, whether that's on an airplane or on a train or on public transit. And equally, the women and men who work in these fields need to feel safe as well. I'll just reiterate a little bit what you said. It is insane that some people in the public would seek to punish someone who's just doing their job, just going to work, whether they're in the airplane cabin, whether they're in the seat driving the transit bus, whether they're working on a mass transit on a train. It just makes no sense at all, but it does happen. And I will not accept any excuses for assaults on transit and transportation workers. And we passed recently a bill that deals with sexual assault and harassment specifically, that requires transportation providers to develop formal policies. It increases penalties against people who physically assault or threaten to assault transportation personnel. a data collection program. So, so we don't even collect this data in a systematic way through transportation. We need to collect this data so you can find patterns and practices and so on in order to more effectively target laws and then have a protected and streamlined reporting process for transportation workers as well. They need to feel protected on the job. They need to feel protected when they report these assaults as well. So there's still work to do. You recognize it. I recognize it. And as someone who, I fly a lot. I'm from Washington State. You're in New York. It's 3,000 miles in between. And I fly a lot back and forth between the nation's capital and my district. I take transit while I'm in DC as well. I use the metro system in Washington, DC to get around because it's a much more efficient way to get around for me. When I grew up, I was taking transit back home. I'm a transit user, and I rely on these women and men to get me from A to B, and I want them to be safe. So we are taking actions. Just a quickly note on the FAA specifically, they initiated a total of 786 investigations into what is called unruly passenger behavior, and despite the mask mandate now going away in transit and transportation, the FAA is going to continue to collect data, continue to investigate unruly passenger behavior, because this should not just be a COVID thing where we try to deal with unruly passengers. This should be an all-time, everyday thing. So the message is continuous, it's consistent, that we will not tolerate assaults on transportation workers.
Well, we appreciate that. And as a president of a union that represents tens of thousands of bus operators and frontline transit workers, but 25,000 flight attendants as well, we appreciate the efforts and particularly with this bill, compelling the employees to sit down with the workforce and come up with real solutions rather than things that perhaps are just designed to look like they're doing something and not actually effectuating anything, not producing any outcome. So, I just one more thing on the assaults, in public transit and perhaps on the airlines as well. But the disinvestment over the last several decades in urban transit has really been the underpinning of the assaults over the last couple of decades. The buses run late, trains run late, somebody's late for work, their children are late for school, and they take it out on the uniformed representative of the transit provider, which happens to be the frontline transit worker who, ironically or not ironically, has nothing to do with the decisions to reduce service or to disinvest in public transit. So all of this federal investment is gonna organically, in a sense, reduce the amount of assaults against our members, and that's an incredible thing. Also the infrastructure bill and automation, we're looking right down the barrel of automation across the board. And some of it is not only automation, but the greening of public transit and the greening of other transportation modes. And some of it is a bit like no good deed goes unpunished. And just with the issue of electric buses, which I know you're aware of, and the issue, and I've heard you speak about it before, and appreciated your comments. So we have a situation where the potential is that in an effort to green urban America, we bring in electric buses, and then electric buses come and they need less maintenance because there's no combustion engine. And when they need less maintenance, these transit providers and others just move to reduce the workforce. And I would put forth that so many of the transit providers, both public and private, either in the pursuit of profit or in the pursuit of a reduced budget line, really don't care about greening the environment. They want to bring in electric buses solely for the purpose of getting rid of workers if they can. And again, I think it's this combination, which I wish was forever going forward the way it would be, that between the Democrats and the trade union movement, we have such an ability to defend and advance working people when we work in conjunction, and that's really the way it ought to be. So the infrastructure bill gives us the tools to protect our workers. There's a workforce development elements of it that that certainly will not allow bus mechanics, traditional bus mechanics, to be cast aside. And you know, I wonder if you would want to just speak about that for a second, because it's a really incredible element of this bill.
Yeah, it is. There's this is the largest investment we've ever made in transit in I think in the history of Congress since we've had public transit. So both in rail and in buses, and we've talked, as you noted, for me in the past about electric buses, electric transit, and then I've noted your concerns as well. But I also note that you know, in my district, we have now 2 transit agencies that are they're represented by ATU and by the mechanics, by the machinists, and this is in the Pacific Northwest, and they're transitioning to electric transit, but they are combining that transition of the actual buses, the platforms, with the training and retraining, because it is a different machine, but it's still not just, hey, here's an electric bus, go forth and drive, and you'll never have to fix it. They need fixing like diesel buses, but they need different kind of fixing because they're electric buses. And you need to train workers and retrain the workforce, because you still need the mechanics in the shop. I mean, I've been to these shops. You still need folks there to do the work on these. And on top of that, it's a different infrastructure to support the fueling and refueling, because these are electric and not diesel. So I guess my point of view is that at least our experience in the Pacific Northwest isn't that this is an opportunity to shed workers. It's more of an opportunity to clean up the environment, clean up the air, decreasing the diesel emissions that come out of diesel buses, then instead use electricity, and to train and retrain the existing workforce as well. Not to mention, John, I'll just note that because of the Made in America provisions of this infrastructure bill, there's a Canadian company, a bus manufacturing company, that moved operations into what will soon be my district, just across the Canadian border in Northwest Washington State, to build buses and coaches in order to take advantage of the Made American provisions. And that means that we'll have more American workers working this, providing opportunities for a lot of things, including opportunities for local unions to sit down with those workers and get them to consider joining local unions.
Yeah, this is this combination of actually creating manufacturing work, manufacturing electric buses on U.S. soil, state by state, has a chance to revitalize some, for instance, rural economies, perhaps.
Yeah, and this manufacturing facility is in a small town.
Right, well. Right. So that's beautiful. We're seeing the same thing in other states as well. And what's particularly good is the infrastructure bill ensures that we're not going to swap out $90,000 a year bus mechanic jobs that have great medical benefits and a pension, a defined benefit pension. We're not going to swap them out for lower paying manufacturing jobs.
I would not want to be riding in a bus that was built that way. That's for sure.
Right. Well, this bill goes a long way toward ensuring that we get the best of both worlds. We create new manufacturing jobs and we sustain the existing maintenance jobs that we have that are predominantly unionized and really solid blue collar jobs, the kind of jobs that America's working communities are built upon. So just related to electric buses, but not identical, is this issue of automation as well. And I just wanted to talk to you about that for a quick second, and get some thoughts on it. And I've given testimony at Congress on the issue of automation, and I think it's difficult for some, perhaps, some in Congress to understand that we're not opposed to automation or technology. We just want technology to work for working people. So where we are opposed to robots taking the wheel of a bus or a train and displacing workers. But not only that, it's about service delivery in public transit. And the most important element of service delivery in public transit is the human presence in the system. And just in terms of automation and a recent perfect example of where automation can actually be destructive to service delivery and dangerous to riders. So in New York, we've been fighting this fight to keep the two-person train crew, a train driver essentially, and a conductor on the train. And so we've prevailed. I think I've negotiated 3 or 4 contracts with the MTA in New York over the last 12 years or so. And we've beat them back every single time. We've beat them back in their efforts to create what's called one-person train operation. And our fight is really the fight. It's a fight on behalf of not only the workers themselves, but the passengers of the subway and bus system in New York, in this case, the subway system. And we look at that shooting that took place in Sunset Park in Brooklyn a few weeks ago now. It was the quick action of the human workers that making split-second decisions to evacuate 4th Avenue 36th Street Station, either by loading passengers onto a train that was pulling up on an adjacent track across the platform, or evacuating them into the street. If we lose the human presence in public transit in big city America, it's going to lead to the type of disaster that we'll look back and say, how did we ever let this happen? This is outrageous. You know, this could have been prevented if only there was a conductor there, or if only there was a human transit worker there rather than a robot. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, if I could.
Well, I think what's happening in New York really underscores the need to have people operating and present on transit. I don't think, again, as a transit rider myself, I am not comfortable at all with I wouldn't be comfortable at all in the subway system if there was a robot driving the metro train, as a for instance. Or back home, if community transit, the local transit agency, had just a autonomous bus going here and there, because frankly, the technology isn't there yet to make that happen, and you can't control the activity of all the other vehicles present on the roadway. And I don't believe yet we have software coders, programmers who can code every single situation into the algorithms, into the software that would prevent or avoid an accident. We can get close, but man, close isn't good enough. It's close enough as it is out on the road sometimes. So I think the public is going to demand the presence of people to drive, to direct transit now and in the future. That said, there are advantages to investing in technology, like there's assisted driving where you do have a driver, but they're assisted because of technologies and use of sensors and so on. But I'm sure you all know all that, and you go through all that when you negotiate your contracts. But we're a ways away, and I think that as well, the public itself is nowhere near where some of the technology people believe the public ought to be. But I'll go with the public's view most every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most important element here are the passengers of the systems that share your position and share the position of the TWU. They understand the importance of a human presence, and again, you mentioned some of the applications of technology which we absolutely embrace in terms of accident prevention and enhancing pedestrian safety as buses make their way through pedestrian right-of-way areas like crosswalks. But the workers that ride these trains share your point of view. It's the bean counters and the technology hawkers that are trying to do away with a human presence in public transit.
Yeah, and if I could just say, just think of the access issues, folks who are wheelchair bound, trying to get on a bus, and the bus driver's not there to help or assist. I think one example, I was in downtown Seattle and I was getting the bus to go north into a county just where I live. And there's a young man there who was blind, deaf and mute, but he had a system of cards he used to communicate, and there were numbers on the card. And he's clearly a person who'd been trained in order to use the bus in this manner, and the bus drivers knew him. Now that so he could use transit and get around to where he needed to go. I helped him a little bit because just to kind of, and I drew on his hand the number of the bus and so on, just helped him a little bit. Now think of that person's experience if you just had an automated bus with no driver at all, right? You're cutting down access. It's a very unique experience, but it may not be all that unique for wheelchair bound folks or visually impaired folks as well. So there's just a lot of good reasons why you need to have the person on in the driver's seat, literally in the driver's seat, in transit.
Agreed. You know, and hopefully with the help of folks like you as we go forward, we will win these fights, and we've won them so far. So
yeah, right.
But there's plenty more fights to come. And if
I can just note too, I know we're near the end, but and if we just get the Senate to pass the PRO Act, the Protect the Right to Organize Act, which we passed out of the House of Representatives, the #1 labor priority for organized labor in this country, to protect those rights for women and men to join unions, that would go a long way to helping a lot of things.
Yeah, amen. The scourge of right to work has been the greatest detriment to working people having economic security over the last 30, 40, 50 years in America. So do we have more time or?
I probably, I'm not in charge of that, but you're busy, you know, you're the president of an extremely important union, and I don't want to take any more of your time as well.
All right. If there's time, there's time. If there's not, there's not. You folks will just deal with it on your end. But I do want to just talk very briefly about diversity. And
yeah.
You know, the TWU has an incredibly diverse membership, and a big chunk of the diversity that we see, you know, the Philadelphia, third or fourth biggest transit system in America, New York, the biggest transit system in America. You know, these jobs are achieved through civil service testing, which ensures that cycles of racism, for instance, aren't continually perpetuated over decades. And if we look at the seniority rosters, and just using Philly and New York as an example, the seniority rosters are incredibly diverse, whether it be in terms of African Americans, immigrants from South Asia, Latinos. The seniority lists are over 80% of people of color, and it's been created and sustained by two things, in my opinion. And the first thing is civil service, and the second thing is the solid trade union contract that protects those rights through seniority and other means. And I'm wondering if there's a way to mimic the outcomes that we've achieved through over the last several decades through this combination of civil service and collective bargaining rights, seniority rights. If there's a way to achieve, and that's in the public sector for the most part. Yeah. So if there's a way to achieve that or mimic that somehow nationally to produce that outcome, I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, well, I think first off, the elected leaders need to model that. They need to promote that. They need to communicate to the public that our diversity, our strength is our diversity in this country, and our strength in the workforce is our diversity as well. And there's a practical aspect of this too, as the population of the United States grows and as it changes. The folks in the workforce are going to be more diverse, and so those people making the decisions about hiring need to look at that diversity as a source of strength. In the transportation bill, Representative Angie Craig from Minnesota, the late Representative Don Young from Alaska, and I put legislation in that bill to tell the DOT, Department of Transportation, to promote jobs in the transportation workforce, to encourage people to look at transportation, whether it's being a flight attendant, a pilot, a bus driver, working on a train, working on mass transit. In all aspects of the transportation workforce, there's a shortage, and we need people. And you have to combine that with the reality that the workforce itself is changing demographically, and then provide those opportunities, seek out those opportunities. Employers need to seek out folks who are ready, willing, and able to be part of the new workforce. So that's one thing we've done as well. In the infrastructure bill, we've tied many of the project accounts to workforce apprenticeship and opportunities. And we are really encouraging, and the administration has put out guidance on how to think about justice and diversity and equity and inclusion when implementing these programs, including the hiring of people. Again, because there's a moral imperative, but there's a very practical reason. Again, it goes back to the workforce is changing. Employers need to change with it.
Yeah, definitely. So, hopefully that what you just laid out will achieve the outcome that we're seeking, and that we see where there's a solid mechanism to get the job, and then a union contract to hold the job and protect your rights. So, thanks for being here. Thanks for being with me this morning, and enjoyed the conversation very much, and look forward to talking to you soon.
This is great, John. I really appreciate it, and look forward to maybe getting up north. I'm in DC now, so maybe getting up north at some point to see you and your work. Maybe visit your man cave there in Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I'm about equidistant between Lower Manhattan and JFK.
Oh, okay.
Spot.
All right.
And we'd love to take you to our depot in Hell's Kitchen on the west side of Manhattan to show you where the electric bus work is unfolding, and identify some of the problems that frontline mechanics have identified that were unseen by the folks that brought the electric buses there.
Right. That's great. That's a great idea. Great.
Okay. See you later.
Thank you.